Welcome to episode 3 of Soul of Travel interview series. And today I'm really excited to be talking with Rob Holmes from GLP Films. And Rob, I just get started by giving you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself, about your company. And I know that you have kind of like me a long and winding path in the tourism industry, but a little bit about where you started and how you got to where you are today.
Thanks, Christine. It's good to be here. And yeah, my company is GLP Films. We're a full-service content marketing agency, and we're solely dedicated to the sustainable tourism market. So when we do content marketing, we're either working with destinations, DMOs, or brands. So pretty broad range of folks we work with. And my background, sort of getting into this, is I have an undergrad degree actually in science and wildlife management. So I come from the conservation side, hence a real, as we'll talk about today, just a real interest in conservation, if you now want to call it sustainability, very near and dear to myself and I think collectively for our team. But also I have a business degree, an MBA. So I went to grad school, getting into international travel, traveling extensively around the world, which I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more about how I got to where I am now. But so it really, I think, putting together GLP, we started in 2008. So we've actually been around for 12 years now. So it's been a long run, but good to be here and happy where we're at.
Yeah. I think I had forgotten that you focused solely on sustainable travel, only because that's tends to be where I always focus just inherently. But I think that's really valuable to share. And for me, I was thinking about talking to you today, and I was thinking, man, he does have the dream job. If I would have known when I was forecasting what I could do in the future, I started out in journalism, then I went to photojournalism and sociology and travel and all of these things, and nothing quite felt right. But when I think about storytelling and connecting that with travel and how that kind of amplifies the quality of the experience, I'm like, wow, that if I would have known that existed, that would have been on my board for what I would have loved to do. What inspired you to relate to travel that way, or what set the wheels in motion for you to use storytelling as a way to connect with people in a destination?
Well, for those, again, I've known folks in the industry a long time now. Our original name, GLP, was called Green Living Project. So going back in the day. And so part of the concept was in putting together the original name, was around green and sustainability. So again, this is 2008, which was really one of the first waves coming out of green. Sustainability wasn't really talked about then. Ecotourism, responsible tourism, but really, I think for me, my roots was in photography. And I was a photographer for 20 years, and I would travel around the world. I traveled around the world actually when I got out of college for a year, went through 11 countries and did a month in every country. So sort of a quality experience. I wasn't just zipping around. I worked in Australia on a green and red pepper farm. I did some menial jobs here and there just to earn enough money to stay in a hostel or whatnot. But I did a lot of these travels. I grew up in the Boston area in New England on the East Coast of the US. And before I moved to Seattle, I did a 3-month trip throughout Central America. And then before I started grad school, I went up and spent 3 months up in Alaska and the Yukon. So travel for me has always been a part of, it just grew over time, and any little window of opportunity in life transition, career transition, I would go travel. And so, but all through these years, again, this is back with, slide film and, no digital cameras, no phones. And so I would come back with all these great photos from my trips, and I would do slideshows, in New England, all across New England. And then when I moved to Seattle, all around the Seattle area. And I'd get two comments from people overall. One, great photos, great, you really captured a moment, a feeling, people, travel. I loved markets. I would go and sit in a marketplace and just watch vendors go by and selling flowers. And, that's where I just loved. So I loved people. I loved commerce. But the other comment I got, in spending all this time traveling were the stories, the adventures. And so that's really where, for me, storytelling, content, really came from, was just my experience being a photographer, traveling extensively around the world, interacting with such a variety of people, having the struggles anyone would traveling by myself, no clue. I mean, when I went around the world, I would call my parents the first Sunday of every month. That's it.
Yeah.
There would be 29 days or 30 days in between. I wouldn't talk to them. So a lot of I was on my own, and that built me, I think, as a person, being resilient, that's such a buzzword now these days, but I learned to be on my own, and again, I could talk a lot about that, but I think in general, the storytelling for me was part of the experience, the adventures I have, and I love to throw some humor and chaos into anything I do. And so storytelling was a great way, I think, with all my career to sort of segue into GLP Films today.
Mm-hmm. I myself, the storytelling is also really important to me. And when I return from a sojourn, which is the trips that I lead, I do a sojourn sharing circle. And people always kind of expect, I think, the notion of what you were talking about before, maybe a slideshow, pictures, and we'll sit down and gather in a circle, and they will ask, oh, where's the computer for the slideshow? And I'm like, no, I'm telling you the story of this trip. And um, I think once people get over that initial kind of shock, or like they have no clue what I'm about to do with them or for them, and we actually step into that space of storytelling, it becomes really powerful and really magical. And I think almost always more valuable than actually showing the pictures. And I too, I love pictures. So all day long, that would be important to me, but it's something about having to tap into the emotion of connecting to the destination, just using your heart and your mind versus seeing a picture and then building your story based on that image. So I think then when you can artfully combine them together, and the skill of weaving together the image and the story, I think it's really powerful. And I wonder for you, what do you see the value for the people that you work with, and why is this a valuable tool for them and their businesses?
You're talking about storytelling?
Yeah, storytelling and branding in this way versus maybe, more traditional marketing, or, I mean,
Right.
when people come to you and they want you to help them to share the story of their destination or their company or their business, what is that value to them?
Sure. Well, again, I got a little story on storytelling, or sort of my approach personally. When starting the company years ago, I was living in Seattle at the time, and I used to go to the Seattle International Film Festival, which is very well known globally for amazing films. And I would literally just go by myself, sit in the back, and watch all these documentary films. And the ones that inspired me were of exotic locations around the world, the Congo, Angola, anywhere in Africa inspired me, but all these remote locations, Papua New Guinea. And, so I fell in love with film, but I fell in love with documentary film because it was so engaging, and it was authentic, and it was real. And, there wasn't a sales sort of pitch in it or anything. It wasn't commercialized. And so I think one of my goals, I think, in starting GLP years ago, was to show that we could produce high quality, authentic digital content. So again, part of my background, I started a company with two others called trails.com, and it was basically taking guidebooks and putting them online and selling them as a subscription model. This is 1999, this is going way back in the dot-com heyday. And so we were doing something very novel and unique at that time. selling, an online subscription to books. And so I basically took that same model to GLP and getting into short digital content, but in the form of video. And so going and seeing and experiencing and loving documentary films made me very determined to show that I could, documentary films make money. And one of the films that inspired me the most, for those that remember, Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, which came out in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that and went, wow, here's a guy who created at that time the most successful documentary film of all time. And it was a slideshow. It was a PowerPoint. And so I saw that and said, there's got to be a way to do this. Video was just starting to evolve. And I saw that and just said, this is my format. Being a photographer, someone who loves still imagery, I do exhibits, I do the presentations I talked about earlier. So I was very determined and saw this new format of video as really a way to convene to people, again, paid content, but produced in an authentic story-based narrative style, like a documentary film. And so ultimately getting to today, it's this authentic, engaging, story-first approach. The other interesting thing, with my background, a lot of my background in my career the last 30 years is in sales. I'm a salesman, but so it's ultimately, there's a business behind it, a business model behind it, a revenue model behind what we do. But again, with this platform of authentic storytelling that's engaging, it's immersive, and it inspires people. At the end of the day, why do people go on trips? They go on trips because they've seen content that engages with them, that connects with them, a place they've never been before that they want to explore. And so really using that platform has been key for us, not just with consumers, but GLP is also a trade brand, so we work with brands, we work with destinations, governments. And so it's also about showing them the power of this authentic story-based content.
Yeah, it is really powerful, and I hope that people that listen will check out the work that you do. But I love that you mentioned it is a business, because even when I watch clips that you show, I don't feel like I'm being sold something, but I do feel like I'm being really inspired to travel. So it is very authentic, and it definitely resonates with me in that way. And I think that's why I love it, because I feel like it really tells the true story of travel. And that is a part of why I started this interview series, is because I know so many people who have this rich connection to travel and tourism, and really do approach it from a different lens. And it's really, I feel like, our mission and our purpose to share the world with other people this way. And it's really powerful. And another reason for starting this series at this time, obviously, is because of where travel is at in this current crisis. And the way that people have been coming together and pulling all of their strengths and standing up for one another, and kind of banding together as a true community. And I don't know if that's unique to the segment that we're in, where everybody has already been very close knit. Obviously, that's the space I live in, so it's the space I know as well. But this sharing what this looks like with the world is kind of my passion right now. Letting people know this type of travel, what it is, why it's important, and then how they can engage with it when they're ready to step back out into the world. And I know you in particular started your own project to bring awareness to some of this. And I would love to give you the opportunity to speak a little bit about Tourism Strong right now, and the work that you're doing there.
Yeah, when the pandemic hit, we had actually just returned from Asia filming in January. And then actually we were in Southern California in early February. And then obviously things started to shift. And I think for us as a team, we all circled around and said, what can we do? How can we help the industry? This is an industry like yourself we love. We're not going to pivot into a separate industry. This is, we're in it for the long haul. So, I think we just fell back to our core roots in again, why we were started was sort of this positive storytelling. I mean, that was the
Mhm.
original concept behind GLP or Green Living Project back in 2008, was positive stories in green, or conservation or sustainability. And so that was our first reaction was, hey, let's reach out to folks we've worked with. We've had the opportunity to work with over 150 different organizations, it's a mind-boggling number, in over 50 countries around the world, Asia, Africa, Latin America, North America, Europe. So it was actually a great opportunity, because I actually talked to some of my colleagues in the beginning saying, okay, where's our list of, who we've worked with and whatnot. And it was like, we don't really have it written down. So it was fortunately being organized, combing through folders and folder after folder of folks we've worked with. And so, but honestly, Tourism Strong for us has been all about reconnecting with people that we've known, that we've worked with, but also new folks too. I actually have a couple new interviews coming up this next week. So it's all, but I think the premise is, to talk through, everyone, this has rocked everyone's world. COVID-19, this pandemic has impacted everyone. It's unlike any natural disaster that's ever happened. That's very geographic specific. If it's a hurricane or tornado, a typhoon, or any kind of outbreak or natural disaster that's happened, we're all on the same page. And so the premise behind is just to share the challenges, share the struggles. And ironically, I think, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but some of the takeaways for me have been the real consensus of pivoting, of adapting. Like you said, we're in the travel industry because we love it. And it's because of the people and the industry. And I think overall, the most fascinating part, I think the most rewarding part for me has just been hearing the stories of adaptation, of diversifying, of just changing someone's business model because they have to. And I wrote an article on LinkedIn about we are all startups again. Really just that simple point of, doesn't matter how long you've been in business. At the end of the day, no one can survive 2, 3, 6 months with no income. Most businesses, most small, medium-sized businesses. And so, there's a lot of the interviews that we've done. You have companies that are heritage brands in the adventure travel industry having to shut their doors. You've got folks that are struggling with health issues. You've got folks that are, their first knee-jerk reaction is to, well, we have to help our staff. But then the staff is the community. So then this outreach to the broader community to say, how do we put food on the table? Because they're in remote locations where they have no access to anything, and tourism is their livelihood. So, I could talk about Tourism Strong for a long time, but I think for us, it was a way for us to give back. It was a way for us to help. And just the engagement and response we've seen on the Tourism Strong on our website, and then, YouTube and Facebook, seeing people share it and enjoy it and comment, and we just want to help, but I will say the profound positivity that we've seen, of resilience, of we're going to get through this together, has been pretty overwhelming with the wide range of challenging experiences people have gone through.
A few things that you just brought up that I wanted to reflect on through the past couple of interviews, that pairing back to what we started from and the why, I think is really valuable, and I think a real gift of this moment. I think people are doing that in their personal lives and in their professional lives, and I've seen that rippling through to a lot of the businesses, and really celebrating what a destination has to offer, or how a company started, because a lot of times we do get wrapped up in the business side of the business and we forget really why we started this. And I think that's the only thing you can do is answer that why right now. And if it's creating connection or awareness or excitement or adventure or calm or whatever, what you set out to do is really kind of the only thing we can do. And I think it's this really powerful gift. And I don't know if you want to speak to that, or if what you've seen. You already were kind of mentioning it. And then the other thought that has been repeated is resilience and adaptability. And I thought about this when you were talking about yourself as a young traveler and how it started to create that in your character, being adaptable. And I mean, that's what I love in travel. And that's why I focus too on the power of travel to transform, because it does teach you all these things. And I think in this industry, we're a whole group of people who've been raised that way and have had that opportunity. And so I can only speculate, but I wonder what that resiliency and that ability to kind of think on our feet, whether it's in a language, you're in a country where you don't speak the language and you're ordering a meal or trying to find transportation, like you're constantly thinking on your feet and adapting in a different way that you don't often get to experience. So I'll just, if that sparks anything that you would like to talk about, I'll give you the space.
Sure, sure. Well, going to your first question, just about, what was your first question?
About peeling back and where this
Getting
is
back
kind
to
of.
the basics.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that has been, like I sort of said, has been everyone, I think consistently is just, the business is at zero. I mean, there's no bookings. We spoke to the first Eco Lodge ever in Brazil, in all of Brazil, literally revenue is down to zero for 3 months. So it's forced everyone to get back to, why did we start this? What was the passion, the drive behind it? Being a 35-year-old brand, a 40-year-old brand, and you've had to shut your doors temporarily, not permanently, but for now. I think that's been sort of the why, like you said. Why are we getting back? Why did we start the business? Why did we get into the tourism industry? It's a powerful reflection. It's a powerful time to really think back of the reasons. I know for our team, we're a small team, virtual, 6 people around the US, actually in Latin America too, sort of full time. And we work with other folks on a part-time basis, but our core team is small. But I do think overall, this pandemic and whole experience, it's brought us closer together, and it's also brought us back to our roots. We rebranded, we changed our name, and you see GLP Films, it doesn't say anything about sustainability and whatnot. And so we're actually using this time to reflect and rebrand ourselves, which has been awesome, to really getting back to our core, because you're right, like you said earlier, you do get you get sort of in that hamster wheel of just moving on to the next project, next business. And I will say overall, one of the things I've really, and I have an optimistic approach on the pandemic, I think overall. I mean, let's be honest, when you look at the tourism industry, it was saturated. It was oversaturated. And hence you're seeing terms like over tourism really inundate these iconic, Venice and Copenhagen and, these, Barcelona, these well-known, beaches in Thailand. There's too many tourists. And I think what's happened is a lot of people just got into the industry and started another business. And there's just the natural process of competition, which is good from the business standpoint. But, and I do know, and, we work with a lot of government ministries, is the trend has always been the volume of people. Can we hit 30 million? Our goal is in 2030 to be at 35 million, and I think this whole pandemic, even though the trend was starting a couple of years ago of destinations really seeing and focusing on the quality tourists, the high value tourists, which is what they want, someone that's going to come and stay longer and spend more money, this has forced them to take a step back and go, okay, who do we want to target for our destination? So, and who is our long-term target audience? And that, I think, has been a good thing. It's also forced a lot of companies that were just in the industry to get out. Again, not to be negative about it, but I do feel it's sort of filtered out sort of the people that were in just to make a buck. The core people are still there. We're resilient. We're rallying together. This is this awesome community you and I are a part of. And that's very, motivating and inspiring to be with like-minded people. There are a lot of great groups out there that are really, picking the industry up and picking individual businesses up, saying, come on, we're going to do this together. But going back to your other point, I think, the transformational and experiences for me, there's two that really stick out. One is the solo travel I did, as I mentioned earlier, traveling around the world for a year by myself. Like that, there's nothing in my life that has impacted me more than being out there on my own. Where am I going to sleep? Where can I get water? Can I trust the water? I don't speak the language. I speak English, and it's embarrassing. I wish I spoke Spanish. I have so many Latino friends and just admire and love languages, but there's no excuse. It's my fault. I wish I was able to speak more languages, but people are very accommodating and patient with me. But I do my best, even though it's a little, not the most beautiful. But it's that broader community. So that international travel really just it gave me just a good thick skin when needing it from the safety standpoint. But I think outside of my individual travel, I think the most satisfying part, just being in this industry for a long time, is working with a brand or a destination and really having their eyes open up to the importance of sustainable tourism. That has been so exciting for us. And, and because there's a lot of emerging destinations that we tend to work with that don't know tourism. They need help. They have a tiny staff, and don't have the manpower, women power, resources, experience, and they're reliant. They need outside help. And what better, in my opinion, to if you're going to start off in tourism, to go into the right tourism. You have so many destinations that are now trying to pull back, like, okay, we attracted too many people. Now we need people to go away so we can try to rebuild and rebrand. So there's a lot of great examples of that around the world. So, but I do think on the satisfaction transformational side is really that aha moment when you see a partner. We call people not really clients, we call them partners. We're going to work with them for years. Is just them seeing the light and seeing that responsible, sustainable tourism is the best approach, that you can make more money if you develop your product, your brand, your destination, your infrastructure correctly. There are long-term benefits, but you have to understand that at the beginning, at the core, with your voice, your values, your mission, vision, et cetera, and going through that whole process, and then ultimately producing content on the back end that'll help market and promote a destination. We have some awesome projects lining up on that. And it's just super rewarding. Again, not just for me, but for the team and for all the partners that get involved with our work. And then ultimately, the client or partner.
Yeah. What an amazing gift, I think, to give a destination, because I've seen it myself where the lure of the things that maybe fall into the category of mass tourism and, the money that seems quick and easy with a chain hotel and a cruise, being a cruise port and things like that. It can really put blinders on, and people don't stop to realize that the reason people are coming there in the first place is because of what's already there, and helping them to see that you have to preserve that because it will be short-lived if you saturate your natural resources in your economy with all of these travelers. And so that's conversations I love to have and love to be a part of. And when I travel, I love like picking the brain of local people of, I'm a traveler here. This is what I think about travel, just starting those conversations and seeing how people feel about it and what they think about it. And often really seeing that local people, and I've been a part of a petition kind of education movement in a place that I had traveled a lot in Belize. The local people really didn't have a voice, and they were getting overrun by the government saying, this will be good for you financially. And they were sitting in a place that didn't have enough water and sewage and garbage treatment just for the people who lived there. And they were really aware of that component. And I was really proud of them actually for really standing up for themselves and saying, no, like this would be great, but we can't, it's not great for us. And, but they were having to fight hard to stand up for themselves. So I think just creating as much awareness with companies and countries and local people, and having it be a full circle dialogue, I think is really valuable. So, and I think sharing tourism through the light that you share it helps to to start those conversations too, because you are looking at it a lot of times through the eyes of the people and the destination versus just looking at a place as a place to go.
Yep.
Um, so let me think here. What else did I want to make sure I touched on with you? We talked a little bit about, I know we're talking a lot about global trips, but I think what we're seeing in the industry right now is a trend towards local travel and staying close to home. Do you see yourself having a role in that part of travel as well, and being able to tie that into the work that you do?
Yeah, so we're actually impacted by that pretty significantly. We have a big campaign we're going to launch in the U.S. In one region where it's 100% local travel, and ironically, the destination, the client, they've never done that, and so it's actually a really exciting opportunity for us to work with them, hands-on, great content we produced last year, and we've really just been sort of waiting patiently to launch this content. We were going to launch it in March for springtime, actually earlier, February, sort of the planning phase. So yes, on the local side, I think on a couple fronts. On the work side, yeah, we have a campaign right now that we're just waiting patiently, and we will launch it in the summertime. We're just waiting for the right time and for a couple indicators to clear through. But yeah, the focus is on in-state specifically, because of quarantine rules and regulations that need to be followed by any out-of-staters. And so this is in the U.S. market. I think on a personal note, it is, and one of the things I've really enjoyed, I mean, you travel and I travel a lot, is just being grounded. I've got two wonderful kids, and spending so much time with them and just being at home, being the dad I love to be. And so being at home, we've gone out, during homeschooling, almost every afternoon and explored trails just in my area in Maine where I've wanted to go. I'm a runner, but I can't run everywhere. And so we've had a lot of fun just exploring the outdoors just in our own backyard. It sounds stereotypical, but it's true, and this has really forced us, and we've met a lot of people out there during the pandemic. And so it's really given, at least for myself and my own family, just a renewed sense of local. But I will say overall, looking at the US market, which obviously we know the best, the consensus is pretty clear that this summer is going to be the summer of local, in-state. It's pretty consistent across the board, across the US. Obviously, there are scenarios where there's overlapping. You're seeing these pools, these linkages coming together where different states are coming together because they have similar impact and impact by and sort of a rebound from the virus. But on the international side, we're actually getting impacted too, because we actually have a big campaign we're about to launch in Asia, and we can't because international travel is just not possible right now. So again, that sort of is another reason to really look at local. So I think long term, it's going to be good in the sense that it's really going to get people to really appreciate what's around them. I just took my kids up to northern Maine just this weekend, camping to an area, Moosehead Lake, which I've always wanted to go to. I've been there in the winter, but never in the spring. And so it was great. There was no one around. There are a few bugs. It's not bug season yet, but yes, local is going to be key across the board, U.S. and globally. That's what everyone's talking about, and that is sort of the upcoming movements of just everything within a certain radius. Driving, road trips are going to be big within a 50, 100-mile radius, 200-mile radius, depending on where you are. So yeah, this is the summer of local travel.
Yeah, I think it's kind of exciting. I grew up in Montana and I live in Colorado now. So, I mean, I'm pretty blessed in what I've been able to experience around me. And yet, I mean, there's so many things even in those places. And I lived in Washington too. So there is a lot I think that we overlook, because when we're caught up in the go, 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 we often, I think, look at travel as an escape, and in that part of that escape process is going far away. And so maybe in this slower pace, this is almost like a slower pace travel. Like we can just simply go away for the weekend or for the day and explore what's around us. And then, like you said, kind of reconnect. And I hope that will allow for us to engage in and respect what's around us more. I think those are values that we both pull into our travel experiences internationally. And I don't know if I'm as conscious about that when I'm traveling locally, but
Mhm.
maybe that opens up the door for that to happen and to create the same kind of conversations and connections and openings for transformation that we have in this other realm of travel.
Yep. Yep. And I think the other thing I would say too, just looking at just the future of travel and where we see travel going, um, I, I think it's pretty clear and it's wonderful and very exciting for us. I mean, we've never been busier right now, you know, and I think a part of that is the importance of content, the importance of digital, the importance of video. I mean, we talked about storytelling earlier. But I think also finally, and it's really refreshing, not that I would recommend a pandemic to have this happen, but I think we're seeing overall, you know, the people are seeing now the importance of sustainable tourism. And, you know, I do think, you know, the future of travel and where it's going is going to revolve. I mean, you're seeing issues, obviously safety, distancing. I mean, these are two very important issues, which will be very relevant throughout the rest of 2020, possibly going into 2021. But safety is, of course, everyone's going to be looking for that. But I think more importantly, the exciting part that I see, being an outdoors person and loving nature and the environment and conservation, is just you know, the growth of nature-based travel, community-based travel, you know, health and wellness. You know, these are really exciting sort of niche industries for a long time, and sustainable tourism, you know, which, you know, and I will say the content that we produce both domestically just recently and in Asia that we're waiting to launch, it's all around that, which again, we sort of lucked out, but it's also our area of focus. So it made sense to have very timely, appropriate content. You know, community-based tourism, you know, you can do in small groups, intimate groups, you're connecting with communities. It's not a big mass group. It's not a tour bus, you know, and that really invites, you know, respecting culture, community, language, obviously nature, the environment. So, and these are all what is just, I think, just again, I think having more of this optimistic view on tourism is that it's gonna be a nice recheck, and yes, there won't be as many businesses out there, but I think the ones that are there are built either for post COVID-19, or they've just been built in a way that makes them resilient, and like we talked about earlier with our tourism strong, you know, businesses pivoting and creating new revenue streams, you know, being more sustainable on their own. You know, these farm breweries that we've been filming, where, you know, they now have chickens and goats and other animals to provide food all year round and to meet their needs from a subsistence standpoint. So a lot of these great, you know, and then you're seeing restaurants that are now doing more takeout, but also becoming more grocery store type, you know, so they're just diversifying. You know, it's just there are other new revenue streams that I think have come out of this that people just weren't aware of, and because it wasn't, they had their blinders on, like, we're going to be, you know, this kind of company, and now they need to take a step back and say, okay, I think we need to adjust here. So I'm very excited to see where tourism is going to go. It's also going to be an exciting opportunity for emerging destinations, which is what we specialize on. You know, I did a big trip in the fall of 2019 through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Armenia, Georgia, places we've filmed before, and we've done workshops. But, you know, these are areas which have a very low tourism base. They are embracing sustainable tourism, adventure travel, seeing that these are important sectors to look at. And they're also, I think, on the great thing, and I talk about this a lot, they're very aware of over-tourism and,
Mhm.
at the forefront, knowing that, okay, we don't want to get too big. And that's wonderful knowledge and education to be aware of going into tourism as you're growing. So I think it's going to be wonderful for these smaller, Central America destinations that aren't inundated, surprisingly, with the close proximity to the U.S. market. That they're going to be able to pivot themselves and target a more affluent, like I said earlier, a high value customer, someone that's going to stay longer and spend more money. That's the dream. I mean, that's what they're looking for. That's the problem they're trying to solve. And so I think tourism is very bright. I think the question is when will the spigot turn back on? I
Mhm.
think the rest of this year it's going to be quiet, like we talked about. The summer is all about local, and then the fall you'll start to see long haul travel pick up in certain select locations. And I think these new locations will have a real opportunity to put their brand out there, put their product out there, and tourists are going to be so excited. As we all know, we've all been cooped up with our kids or with our spouses. We're ready to get out, and once that door opens, there's going to be a lot of people, excited to travel, which will be fun to watch.
Yeah, I myself am really excited, and I had that moment too of kind of, that's where this was kind of born out of, was thinking, of seeing tourism kind of seeing like it was just gonna fall, like how was it gonna sustain itself through this, and then um, kind of the notion of tourism rising and being born again, and that this community and what we offer, I think is what people will be looking for. And maybe I'm hopeful in saying that, but it feels right and it feels true that because we are a lot of small operators, we are already focusing on safety and security in a different way because it so directly impacts us, right? We want to make sure that we're offering something very safe and secure to our travelers, because we're not $1 billion company that can afford any kind of mistake. I think we were really, really thinking about that. And we have really close relationships with our clients. So they're not really clients, they're guests, they're people that we are shepherding through this experience. And so we want to make sure they're safe. And it is often small groups because we want to provide this authentic connection and this intimate experience. And like you said, already nature based and being community based. And so I want to be very positive in the same note. Like, I feel like this is going to offer something really unique. And my interview on Thursday is actually with someone that runs the Los Cabos Tourism Board, and he was already thinking like, he has some background obviously in sustainable and responsible tourism as well, but that people are looking for health and nature and connection and community. And so I think there's already, like, that seems to be the answer to the question. And so I hope that it really will be the time for people to be stepping out and looking for this. And just another quick thought on that is, I keep coming across with this idea of like a cost benefit analysis for myself when I travel. And I feel like things may cost more. It might be a little bit more difficult to access. And so if we're going to put ourselves out there in that way, we really want this rich experience in return. And so that might lead us to be looking for a new destination. We don't want to go to the same place we've been a million times. We might want something to fill our cup up a little bit more. We want a richer experience, and we want it to be longer. We might not be taking a quick trip to somewhere for the weekend. If we actually are going to invest in it, we want to go for longer. So I am hopeful in seeing all of those connections come together to strengthen and become this other next version of tourism as well.
Yeah, I really, we're on the same page. I mean, I really think tourism was getting oversaturated. It really, I mean, you could go anywhere you want for a weekend. It was dirt cheap to travel, and people are doing that. I mean, and they have the right and the ability to do so. So I think this has been a good correction that needed to happen, with the emphasis on quality, with the emphasis on, you're seeing some destinations like Thailand is now looking at possibly, adding a fee to come into the country, be bundled into your airline ticket, but to pay for some of these post-COVID necessary standards and safety protocols that need to go into place. And so I think tourism is going to go through a good correction. And I think it's going to be good to have it a little more expensive. I think it'll still be affordable to anyone. It got so inexpensive. And that's why you saw over tourism happening. It was cheap to go anywhere. And then, so I think there's been a lot of knowledge that's come out of this, on appreciating, respecting, spending time with family, spending time in the outdoors and nature. And you can't have a good experience in nature if it's packed. You can't have a good experience in a community if it's packed. And, so I think, people will be avoiding the hot spots just simply because it's going to be packed with people. But you're also seeing, and being based in Maine, I mean, they're already talking about, potentially closing down some of the streets in downtown to allow restaurants to open up and do outdoor seating, because one, they need the space for distancing, but also from a safety standpoint. But I think the experience, though, to be pedestrian only and to be able to walk and explore your neighborhoods and areas. I mean, this is happening across the country right now. And so I think there's going to be a lot of exciting new products being developed, new services. Yes, virtual is not going anywhere. Webinars aren't going anywhere, and I do feel bad for the event industry, but we've worked with a number of these boutique events, which I think are going to do fine, because again, it's smaller concentration of people. So I think ultimately it's going to be a good shakeup for tourism, both on the trade side. It's going to bring people together. And then on the consumer side, it's going to really force people to really think outside the box. Where can we go? Where haven't we explored? How far can I push myself? And what better than to have more people, in my opinion, having a rich experience in nature, in the outdoors, in indigenous or rural communities, again, assuming it's done well and responsibly. I'm excited to see where all this goes.
Yeah, me too. I was just reading about the dining outside and closing streets and making it pedestrian. I had the same thought. I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be like when I travel somewhere else, the things I love that we don't have because we just hurry up and drive everywhere. And again, creating those kind of backyard, backdoor experiences here. I think I'm looking forward to that. So lastly, I would just love for you to be able to share how people can connect with you, how they can follow Tourism Strong, if there's ways that they can support the people that you work with in the travel community, because often, we're supporting not just our businesses, but guides and restaurants, and we have all these layers that maybe aren't fully seen. But if there's anything that you want to share in that regard.
Sure. Well, people can obviously find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, but I think more importantly, for us, I think one of the satisfying things, having been in the industry for over 12 years now, is I get so many people I meet, some people I don't even know at trade shows. If I speak at ITB or WTM, some of these big shows will come up and say, I've been using your video, from Indonesia or from Georgia or, long time, Peru, that we've worked, using it for my students, for my colleagues on the trade side, for capacity building training, really rewarding. So I will say a lot of, all our videos are on our website, obviously YouTube, Vimeo. So they can just go to our website, glpfilms.com. Obviously find us and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the main outlets. But, I think for us, we're in the industry like yourself, for the long haul. And, we're so excited to bring the industry together. I mean, we're, focused on the supply chain, inbound operators, outbound operators, travel agents, those are the people we work with. And it's going to be fun to see how we all collectively together rebuild tourism. And I think it's going to come out the other end in a nice long-term, more sustainable format and much more diversified. I think some unique products are going to come out of here. So, but yeah, people are welcome to reach out. I always love connecting with folks and hearing their ideas or stories or how we could work together. And, again, thanks again for having me on this.
Yep. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.